Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Eat Meat and Question Everything with Devin and Courtney. Today we have the amazing Josie, yay, from the Ex-Plant Eater. Josie, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so cool to finally talk to both of you.
I know, so exciting. Okay, why don't you give everyone a rundown what your story is, how you used to be vegan, all that, and then we can just go from there.
Absolutely. So, I have to say, from a pretty young age, I was always interested in health, which ties into why I got into veganism and now why I got into carnivore. I remember being in health class, and this was before I had any issues with food. We watched the documentary Super Size Me, and I had family members at the time that had either diabetes or cancer, like older family members. So when I watched Super Size Me, I was genuinely terrified. It really like hit somewhere deep down and made me scared of getting those health issues as I got older. So fast forward, I would say about 2 years, I was getting into my preteen years, and I was on the chubbier side, but I totally had some kind of body dysmorphia because I don't think I was ever actually overweight. I was never told that by a doctor, but I was just becoming more self-conscious. So I decided I wanted to lose 20 pounds as like a 12 or 13-year-old, and I did not go about it in a smart way. I remember I think I got my first laptop when I was around 12, so I used it to research whatever I wanted. And I remember I researched how to lose weight and I found the worst advice about counting calories, and it developed. So I listened to the advice and it developed into an eating disorder throughout about a 6 month period. And finally, towards the end of that 6 months, I was in really bad shape, and my mom started bringing me to an eating disorder doctor. And the doctor basically told me if I didn't stop, I would die. So I that kind of woke me up, and I started trying to eat normally again. I wasn't vegan yet at the time, but I was mentally not okay. And my mom was trying to help me as much as she could, but I've always been very stubborn. So I didn't like want to go to a psychologist or anything. I just went to this one doctor that was the only thing I would do. So I was kind of trying to recover on my own, and it was a very, rocky road. It wasn't smooth at all. And I would say, I got back to a healthy weight. I stopped starving myself. Again, I wasn't vegan at the time, but I'd obviously messed myself up pretty bad. And right at like the perfect time of probably about 6 months to a year after I recovered, like like a weight way, I still wasn't mentally recovered, but about 6 months to a year after, I came across a PETA tent at a concert I was at, and they were handing out flyers and probably showing Earthlings. I can't remember, but either way, I know I went home and watched Earthlings that night, and it made me go vegan overnight. I was really sold on the fact that veganism was the healthiest, that it was the most ethical, that it was the right way. It was doing right by animals. And I was like in the perfect position at the time after having an eating disorder, I think, to kind of be so susceptible to something like that, to not think twice about it. So I was vegan after that for 14 years. And people have asked me if I've cheated. I never intentionally cheated, but there were on two occasions when I had milk, and it was, I think, both times on accident. Otherwise, I was truly vegan. Like I actually did not eat any animal products. And at the end of the day, I think that because I actually did it to the T, really, besides those two times, I really do think that's why I got sick, because I wasn't sneaking animal foods. And yeah, so at about year 10, I got diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. I had two really bad flares that year. And the second one, I almost died from if I hadn't gone into the hospital when I did. Both times I had to go to the hospital. And I I just never accepted that it could be something that was genetic. Something about it just did not make sense to me. I was told that by every doctor that I saw, that it would never fully heal. And only eventually, like 4 years after I got diagnosed, when I started to incorporate animal products again, did I see those symptoms start to like finally for the first time heal. And since, I started the carnivore diet, I've seen my colitis go into remission, which naturally, which I never thought was possible.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so two things. When you mentioned like, oh, you didn't cheat on veganism, that reminds me, like, I've heard that that's kind of the common thing that people are secretly cheating when they're on vegan and having animal products. Like, did you know of that, or is that just like a myth?
I never really, so I didn't have a lot of friends who were vegan. And at the time, really, my sense of, a community was online. I watched so many vegan YouTubers when I was vegan. And obviously, they never were really broadcasting about cheating. So I never really saw it myself. I have, one or two friends who are vegan. Actually, one of them, I think I woke her up a little bit because she started eating eggs again a few months ago. But years ago, she asked me, "Have do you ever cheat? Like, do you ever even have like ranch dressing with egg in it or something?" And I said no. And we never got farther with that conversation. So I don't know if that was maybe because she was gonna confide in me that she does that sometimes, but I don't know. I never saw it too much, but I know it's a pretty common thing. I know if it's come out with a lot of vegans that are in the public eye that they have been out at restaurants eating steak or eggs or something, which is so dishonest. But I never really saw it myself. I can't say that.
What do they call it? Like being a flexitarian, I think is what it is, where they're like 99% of the time they're vegan and then that 1% they're flexible. I think that's what they call it now. That's like the terminology.
Yeah, it's something like that. Yeah, it's so bizarre.
Interesting. Um, okay, so I just want to say first, I think these ex-vegan stories are so fascinating to me because it's not just like you're changing your diet, like you're changing a lot of like what I'm assuming is like your ideology and your beliefs and just how you are as a person because it's all like, the animal rights and stuff too. So it's so much more than just your diet. At least that's what it looks like from an outsider's perspective. So I feel like it's pretty wild for someone to come to that realization that maybe they should be eating meat and essentially question everything that they've been taught or not even been taught or all their beliefs and what they feel. So what was that like turning point for you? Like when was that moment when you're like, oh shit, like I think I should be eating meat?
I remember it essentially, so it's sad, but my fiance's brother died in a car accident in 2021, and that sent me into like the worst flare that I'd had in years, because of the stress I was under and whatnot. And I was starting to question it a tiny bit before that. So I think that was the event that really it made me so desperate to find a way to like actually heal my condition without having to go and take medications with horrible side effects. It made me desperate. So I happened to read a book that like had a few paragraphs that were about veganism. And the author was just explaining that a vegan diet is ultimately degenerative for your tissues, your brain, and everything basically. And I read it. It was kind of like the same concept of when I watched Earthlings. It was the exact right time. I read this at the exact right time, and it was what kind of made the light bulb go off and made me realize I've tried everything else. I altered my diet as a vegan, in terms of macronutrients, in terms of things I was taking out to see if it would help with my colitis. I was pretty steady for about 2 years, I would say, keeping it under control, but I was still getting minor flares like every month or so. But this this essentially made me think I've tried everything else. I might as well just try the most innocent thing I can think of, which was bone broth, and see if it'll help. And it helped like right from the get-go. Like the first week, I remember I was starting to see improvements in my digestion and I was starting to see improvements in my skin also. which I never really even considered myself to have bad skin when I was a vegan. My skin was always clear, but I was starting to notice that my skin was aging, and I just figured it was my age. But it was starting to like become a lot more noticeable. And, I started to see it improve like right from the get-go, right from that first week.
Wow, that's crazy. So how long did it take for you? Did you do a slow transition over to carnivore? What did that look like, or did you ease yourself in? And then what does your diet look like now?
So in that sense, I did it the opposite way because I went vegan overnight. And with carnivore, I did it over a 6-month period. So when I stopped being vegan, the concept of carnivore was still foreign to me. If I'd been presented with that right away, I think I would have thought it was insane. So I incorporated more meat and more animal products in my diet over a 6-month period. I took steps. So like at first I did just have bone broth. A few weeks later, I introduced eggs and fish. And then a few weeks after that, I had chicken and turkey again. And I remember feeling so vindicated because I was still having like some symptoms like blood in my stool up until that point, and that it went away then when I started having chicken and turkey. So I knew I was doing something right. I knew that these foods, if I stopped eating them again, I was asking to get sick again. So I would say after about 4 months or 5 months, I was finally ready to have beef again because that was the scariest food for me at the time. I believe so much propaganda about beef. And yeah, when I started including beef again, I again saw another like huge improvement in everything. My like with my mental health, with my energy, with my just mood in general. I felt calmer, I had less anxiety. I again noticed a huge, another like I stepped up with my digestive system with like the amount that it had healed. And by the time that I introduced beef again, I was starting to watch people on YouTube that did carnivore. One of the people that woke me up was Speria or Sperige. I don't know how to say it, but he's very he has a lot of controversial ideas, but he does a like raw meat carnivore diet with fruit. And from right at the beginning, I thought it was insane. But as I watched his videos, he has a lot of critique videos on vegans. And I just went down the rabbit hole of watching all of them. He also has this series called The Epitome of Malnourishment, where he shows a lot of vegans from the time that they went vegan to like a few years later. And you can see how mentally they are just degenerating. And it was those videos are very disturbing. I always say if you want to wake a vegan up, like show them that. And if they don't wake up, then I don't know. Then they're not ready. But other than that, yeah, I was watching his reaction videos to vegans, and that started to really wake me up. And that started to make me realize that meat is essentially a food that we've been eating for millennia. Like we're where we are because of eating meat. And that started to get into my brain. Like it started to make sense to me. And I would say I actually found Steak and Butter Gal from watching his videos, even though he made a video about her that was not very nice, which in retrospect, it was a stupid video, but I found her from him. And when I found her YouTube channel, I saw that she had really nice skin. She looked fit, she was happy, she was eating a diet that was like the complete opposite to what I would have thought was healthy when I was vegan. And that was, I think, when I finally decided, especially for my ulcerative colitis, to like fully heal it, to give it a shot. And that was probably around February. It was around when I made my account.
Okay, so all that has happened in less than a year. That's so wild.
Have
Okay,
like whiplash from how like much response you've gotten. That's wild.
What was that?
You have like whiplash from the response that you've gotten on social media. Did you expect it to be like to blow up like it did?
No. Oh
Mm.
no. I was happy when I started to see it gaining traction because I didn't expect much, but I didn't expect like like you said, almost like the like whiplash. Like if I didn't expect that at all. And I'm very grateful that it did, but you know, sometimes it is like it's hard to manage, but yeah, it's overall I'm happy about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously you're helping a lot of people, but then I'm assuming, or I do know that you also get a lot of hate and a lot of comments from, people that are still vegan. I don't know if there's anything like you want to address with that, or I guess some of the things like what are their arguments, or what do they even, I guess one of the things I see a lot is, they think they have a bloodless diet when, so many like little critters are getting killed to grow like the crops. Was that something that like, were you aware of that? Because that didn't even come to my mind till I'm like seeing all this stuff. So what's your thoughts on that?
That was also something that I was unaware of. I never even thought about it as a vegan, which just goes to show how much I thought about it, how much I actually looked into it. I never I never came across that research or that idea until at like fully after I stopped being vegan, probably after I started eating carnivore and I started seeing other people who make content make these arguments. And when I finally looked into it myself, I realized alone, like just to produce grain, I think like billions of mice need to be poisoned every couple of years so that they don't like ruin the grain. I know that hogs and other wildlife are shot to protect crops. Um, it's so crazy that like they really do. The vegans, a lot of the ones that come onto my profile, they truly do believe that they're not killing any animals by their diet. And if you try to point out the facts, they just ostracize you and insult your appearance, and it just goes to show that they're not really thinking about it rationally.
Yeah, that's true. And then not to mention just like the lack of nutrients. What are your thoughts on that? Because I mean, I feel like they believe they're getting everything they need, even like with the supplements and stuff.
Were
I
you
guess I
Yeah, I would like were you taking a lot of supplements, especially because you were having like a medical issue? Were you heavily supplemented or did you really try and do like a whole foods diet?
I took vitamin B12 pretty consistently as a vegan. After I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, I remember I was taking like vitamin D3, I think, which I don't even know if that can be a vegan supplement. Like, I don't remember exactly what I was taking, but I probably thought it was vegan when I was taking it. I took that. I took like vegan DHA, which is made from, I think, algae. Uh, I didn't take all of those things at like every single day as a vegan, but I took them like throughout, I took them periodically when I thought I needed them. I took iron at some points. Um I can't remember what else, but I did supplement. I just didn't have like a supplement regimen throughout the whole time. There were times that I did try to really stick to a whole foods diet while being vegan. And I truly remember those times because I was probably eating even less protein and less fat than I normally would have been. I I remember always having cravings, always feeling like mentally unsound, like I needed something else, or like I always had really bad anxiety. And I really I feel like I was the most depressed at those points. So and again, it probably goes back to the fact that I was eating not a lot of protein and not a lot of fat.
Did you ever crave meat? I had a friend who was pretty much a vegetarian and she around her menstrual cycle would text me and say, "Oh my God, I want a cheeseburger so bad. Like I want a cheeseburger." And I was like, "Your body is craving iron right now." Like, did you ever think like, "Damn, like I'd love to have like some grilled chicken," or did you ever feel that way or were you so in that zone of being a vegan that it was like the thought repulsed you?
It didn't repulse me, but in a way, I mentally, I guess it's like kind of like being in denial. So I would crave meat substitutes. I would say like the last couple of years of me being vegan, I was eating meat substitutes a lot, and I never equated that to having cravings for the real thing, which I know that's exactly what it is now. I would crave them all the time. And maybe in a way, it's like I was craving the real thing, but I just mentally, I equated it to wanting meat substitutes and like dairy substitutes. So in that sense, I did crave those things a lot, but I would always like fulfill that craving by having like be a Beyond Burger or like Morningstar Farms chicken nuggets or something. It's like it's gross to think about now.
Now,
Go.
I do have another question though. I I am familiar with ulcerative colitis, and if you're comfortable talking about it, I don't know that everyone is familiar with it. Could you just explain like a tiny bit what like how you got diagnosed, like what your symptoms were? Is it similar or the same thing to Crohn's disease? Just because I'm like always loving to learn more about what I think a lot of people have digestion issues, and it's really important to kind of understand what those symptoms were so that maybe they could be a lot of people who are talk to us are like, "Hey, I'm having this issue." And I always wonder like, you're eating fruits and plants too. You're more ketogenic. I'm wondering if you're having like some sort of digestion issue. So could you just like explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So it is similar to Crohn's, but ulcerative colitis is it's just with the colon. Crohn's is with the entire digestive system. So with Crohn's, you can have upset in like your actual stomach or your like esophagus or your mouth. It's through the whole digestive system. Ulcerative colitis, on the other hand, is just having to do with the colon.
Okay.
So my symptoms were again, I got diagnosed around like year 10 of me being vegan. I think it was 2017. I remember in the beginning of the year, I was starting to have really bad nausea and stomach pain after I would eat, like a sharp pain in my lower intestine. And I didn't think it was some, health issue that was starting to develop. I just figured it was, just a side effect of something I ate. And I remember it was getting worse as the days went on when these symptoms started, and I think it went for a few weeks, and finally I was starting to realize that something wasn't right. I was probably the first flare that I ever had. I wasn't having really bad diarrhea yet, but I think I was like constipated. So I was really constipated, and I was having that pain in my lower intestine, and it just wasn't going away. Finally, I think I started to get a fever. So I went to the hospital then because the pain was getting so bad also. And I was admitted to the hospital. Initially, I was diagnosed with diverticulitis. They put me on what are they called? So whatever kills an infection. Why am I drawing a blank on
Antibiotic?
that? Yeah, an antibiotic. Yes. They put me on an antibiotic, and it, seemingly fixed the issue for the time being. The pain went away. It wasn't perfect. My digestion still wasn't perfect, but it seemed to heal it for the time being. So that was, I want to say, in maybe like May at that point. I went through the whole summer. Again, my digestion wasn't perfect, but it wasn't, that bad. Then in like late October, like going into November, the symptoms started to come back. And this time they were like 10 times worse. I started to develop blood in my stool. I started to have diarrhea like up to 10 times a day. And these were things that got progressively worse. It wasn't like it just happened like one day I was fine, the next day I was having things like that. It built up. It got like progressively worse. I get again had severe pain in my lower intestines. I was starting to get fevers on a daily basis, like a low grade fever. Because my body wasn't absorbing anything, no matter what I ate, I felt I had no energy. I was super lethargic. I would come home from school at the time and just lay down. I had no energy to do anything. I don't even know like how I got through that semester, but somehow I did. And other than that, I said blood in my stool. I think I mentioned all the symptoms. It kept getting worse, and I started to notice, because again, probably from nutrient deficiencies, that my heart rate was starting to get irregular. So finally, that was when I went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, you have to go right to the ER, like right now. He told me in the doctor's office, I think, like, if you didn't come to me today, you could have died in the next couple of days. Like, your potassium is really, really low. So I went to the ER after that. They had admitted me right away. And that was, they did a partial colonoscopy. They couldn't do a full colonoscopy, I think. I don't even remember why. I think because I had so much inflammation in my colon at the time or something, but they did a partial colonoscopy, and that was how I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And after that, they put me on a corticosteroid, which was the only thing that healed my colon at the time. So I took that for about a month, and then after that, I was okay. Uh, but after that, I didn't, they wanted to put me on like biologics, and I was never comfortable doing that. So I just after that, for the next couple of years, I managed my symptoms by like taking certain things out of my diet, by finding, like certain herbs and stuff that helped with inflammation. It was it's just another, it's like an extension of my personality in the sense that like I've always distrusted doctors, and in a way it's helped me, but in other ways it's hurt me.
So all that time when you're like doing these meds and going to the hospital, did anybody once like talk about your diet and what you're eating?
Yeah, so my doctors were all aware that I was vegan, and they further misled me by saying that, well, red meat and dairy aggravate ulcerative colitis, so you're actually one step ahead. And I believed it at the time. And that was really the only advice that they gave me in regards to veganism and meat. Otherwise, I remember they gave me this sheet, and it was I think like it's called a low FODMAP diet, and it's supposed to be foods that all like are easy on your gut. And it was all like white rice and white pasta, bananas, applesauce, and that was what I was expected to eat for the rest of my life. And as soon as I started to get better, I started to reintroduce things like meat substitutes because I was probably craving the real thing so much.
Wow. Yeah, it's just crazy like how I feel like they're so misinformed on nutrition. And that's like the complete opposite of what has helped you heal.
Yeah.
You gonna say something, Devin?
Yeah, I'm just like wondering, you start introducing meat products back in because something like that book you had spoken of kind of resonated with you. At what point were you like, holy heck, this is really working? I think I need to do like a full-blown carnivore diet. And then also to that, I'm sure you see a lot of fruit is very popular in the carnivore animal, what is it? What is animal-based space? Do you consume any type of plant material at this point either?
So to answer the first part, the switch really went off for me. I would say when I did reintroduce chicken and turkey again, because that was when the blood in my stool fully healed. And I I remember I would say in like early January was when I was starting to consider the carnivore diet because I found Steak and Butter Gal, and I think I found like Ken Berry at the time too. So it was like a doctor too that started to make me feel more confident about it. And I saw my own digestive issues completely reversing. So that really like drove it home for me that if these things are healing, this way of eating must be healthy. It just does not make any sense to me that it couldn't be if it's healing my body. And what was the second part of that?
I just the
Yeah.
fruit. You see a lot
Oh.
of like carnivores who are really strict carnivore and then went to animal based and now they incorporate tons of fruit. Have you ever tried to incorporate fruit? Does that like do you think that that would make your ulcerative colitis kind of come out of remission? Because I know you're doing really well right now.
I was eating, I remember citrus a lot when I first started the carnivore diet, or like, whatever would be considered really close to carnivore. Eventually, I did take it out because I was starting to get slight digestive pain after I would eat citrus. But ultimately, out of every fruit, that seemed to be what didn't bother me as much as other things. I did take all fruit, all fiber, and all plant foods out for, I would say like 3 or 4 months. And during that time is when I actually saw like all of my symptoms fully go into remission, because I was still having diarrhea and constipation, and those things finally healed during that time. And really I've stuck to that closely since then. The only time, so I tried to have pickles again. It didn't go well. I tried to have avocado again. Again, it didn't go well. They gave me a rash, and I think it gave me like slight digestive pain once again. And then I tried butternut squash a few weeks ago also, and it gave me horrible diarrhea. Then after I got the flu, I did not want to eat plain meat. It was like nauseating to think about even. So I tried having like a little bit of tomato sauce, like literally just tomatoes and basil, like no other weird stuff in it. Tried having that with like beef, and that especially right when I ate it, I felt my skin get irritated. Like I felt it get it almost felt drier. So that I knew, I was like, all right, I can compromise with this because it's getting me to eat anything right now, but I knew I had to take it back out like right away. And there were a few other little things like that. Like I had like hot sauce again and mustard at during that time when I was just like starting to recover from the flu. And every single thing gave me negative side effects. So finally, when I was finally like feeling better, I took all of that stuff out, and I'm back on like strict carnivore now with coffee, because inevitably all of those things always give me issues.
Do you do dairy?
Yeah, I do. I don't I I was having milk and half for a while, but I did switch to just heavy cream now, because I think you do the same thing, or I've seen you have heavy cream a lot, because I don't know if it's actually lactose, but something in those things irritates my skin. So I don't do like regular milk ever anymore. I do have cheese. I really like hard cheeses. Like the less, it seems like the common factor is whatever has the least amount of lactose in it, I do well with. So yeah, like hard cheeses I really like. I do like sour cream a lot. I would get raw dairy, but I just don't have a like an easy access to it right now. So I just buy like the best quality I can get.
Yeah, and some of those hard cheeses I feel like are made with raw milk, even though they're not like advertised as like raw. Like I trying to think like I know like the Gruyere usually is raw milk, so maybe that's kind of why you're having good benefits with it. Like the super hard cheeses like that. Um, I'm just wondering if there's anybody like if there's a vegan that's kind of like maybe starting to perk their ears up at this, if there's any like words of encouragement or anything you would want to say. And then also if someone is looking to go from veganism to carnivore, if there's any sort of transition you recommend or just go full in, like what would your advice be to that?
First of all, I would say for anybody in that situation is to really ask yourself if veganism is something that you're tying to your identity. And if you have beliefs around it that you won't compromise on, that might not be true. Because ultimately that was really what it came down for with me, is that I I almost didn't want to let it go for a period of time, because it's like, who would I be if I stopped being vegan? Everybody I knew me as that person who'd been vegan for a long time. So I would say, first of all, to ask themselves that, and to not be afraid to change. Like if you look at any of the ex-vegans who switch to carnivore or an animal-based diet, they're doing so much better. And it's like an objective, and it's like a fact, like you can see it. So I would say that, and yeah, I think the biggest thing is to not be afraid to change, like to change your whole identity. And I know that that's a scary thing, but if you know, if you're starting to experience really uh, negative side effects to being vegan, it's like you can only improve from where you are. And I would recommend a slow transition. I feel like if you do like an overnight transition, I know with like steak and butter gal, for example, she had really negative side effects like diarrhea and other things. I can't remember exactly what she said, but I know there are negative side effects that come along with transitioning like overnight. I personally transitioned over about a 7 to 8 month period in total. And I think that it was the best way for me to transition because it allowed me to see it allowed me to see with each food that it wasn't going to hurt me in the way that I thought. Like, because I was coming from a place where I believed animal products were so bad for you. I truly did believe that they were the reason that we have an obesity epidemic. And every single time I reintroduced another food, I felt better. I saw my complexion improve. I saw my digestive issues improve. So with each thing I saw the things that I once believed about it to not be true. And I think for somebody that has done veganism for, I guess what you could call the right reasons, like they just truly believe that it's the healthiest, they probably need that transition time to be able to see that those foods aren't going to completely make their health like do a 180 in a bad way. So, yeah, I recommend a slow transition. I recommend adding foods back in steps.
Yeah, I would see that too. And almost to like kind of like wrap your brain around it too. I mean, it's a whole like mental shift you're doing and changing all your thoughts. So it's got to be hard to even do that part of it overnight. Um, Devin, before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to ask her?
I just am like wondering, beyond obviously your ulcerative colitis, you've touched on your skin. What are the other like top things that eating meat has just made you feel? Like, what other benefits have you seen just beyond like the ulcerative? I think the ulcerative colitis is probably the most important, but I feel like a lot of us come from a space where there's maybe some health issues we're looking to cure or address. And then we find out that there's like so many other issues that we would have never even dreamed of curing or fixing or addressing. And we find that eating meat in high doses really helps with that. What are some of those other things like for you?
I would say, first of all, my skin is what has seen the biggest improvement. And even though towards the end of veganism, I considered myself to have good skin because I wasn't breaking out, there were periods of time when I look back when I was a little younger where I had a lot of acne. And now my skin has done like a 180 with that. And it's a lot more vibrant just in general. So my skin, I saw a really big improvement with mental soundness and clarity and just lack of anxiety is another huge thing that I've experienced since I started this way of eating, which was something that I never thought a diet could do. I just thought that it was, like a normal thing that everybody experienced, but I'm so much more level-headed and like I can focus on things so much easier now than when I was vegan. Another weird thing that I've started to notice more recently is my sense of smell. I things that I don't think I ever even noticed before. Like for example, we spray these chemicals at my job, and I it's for like fleas and ticks, and I never smelled it before. I've been working there for like over a year. Last year I never smelled it. And now it's like the worst smell in the world to me. It smells like grass and chemicals. I don't even know how else to describe it, but it's the most horrible smell, and I never noticed it before. And other things too, if if the garbage needs to be thrown out, I used to never really like smell it from a distance, but now I know right away I can smell it. So my sense of smell is a lot more like acute. Uh Other than that too, I feel like I see more, like I'm aware of more in my my vicinity when I'm driving. I feel like I notice more. I'm much more observant. So like you said, so many things have improved that I never even imagined a diet could affect. That when I talk to people about it that don't do this way of eating, I think I must sound like I'm just making things up off the top of my head, like to make a diet sound good, but it's true.
Yeah, I agree. And that's, I hear a lot of people say like, gosh, I didn't realize how bad I used to feel till I feel so good right now. Like aches and pains and little quirks we kind of get used to as being normal. But once they like go away, you're like, oh shit, like I feel good.
Or
So that's
even like
awesome.
mental health. Like I think no one, I was in anxiety medicine after I had my second son for postpartum anxiety. And no one ever told me like, hey, like what are you eating? You know, and I was a ketogenic diet person. So I was eating pretty clean for the most part. But I just feel like no one goes into it thinking like, oh, I'm gonna get off like my anti-anxiety medicine, or I'm like really gonna be a lot more calm and laid back. And I just I think that that's like a number one thing for me is like how much the mental health and stability has been addressed. And I would have never even thought about that, you know, as far as a diet. No one ever told me that a diet can affect your anxiety or even depression.
Because they don't
Yeah.
tell people that. I don't think they believe it. Even the doctors. I think they don't think it can be fixed. I think they just think it's a chemical or whatever is going on. But I mean, it definitely plays a part. I mean, it did for me at least.
Yeah, I saw the same thing.
Yeah, so that's awesome.
Any other questions?
I think we should do our like three fun ones and then we can let everyone know where to find you. But first, thanks so much for sharing all this. This was awesome. I hope like there's some curious people out there that are maybe still vegan and they give it a shot and change their lives. So thank you so much for being here with us. We're gonna ask you three fun questions and then you can tell everyone where to find you. Okay, first, what is your favorite curse word?
Oh, I have to say it's fuck. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, what else? Yeah, I mean, like, what about you guys?
Oh, fuck or shit is what I say all the time. Yeah.
I like them all equally, to be honest. I think Dr. Chafee, we asked him and what did he say? It was like, I
It
don't
was like a combo word. I
it
forget
was
what
like
it
a
was, but it was
combo word, but it
funny.
was really funny. So it
What,
seems to
like
be
shit
trying.
fuck or something?
It was something like I forget what.
Yeah, but it had something to do with fuck, so that seems to be a common answer. And then the second one is what, Courtney? What is the what
Um,
was your favorite non like what was your favorite junk food to eat when you were not carnivore?
Would Chipotle be considered junk? Because
Yeah.
I was obsessed with Chipotle as a vegan. Even actually after I stopped being vegan and I went and got like a chicken bowl, I honestly did not even like it as much as what I used to get. I love Chipotle so much.
Do you ever go and just get like meat?
I would, but the problem is seasonings with me, and I feel like I've maybe like pigeonholed myself into eating in a really strict way because like I stopped eating seasonings to begin with, but I would if I didn't have issues with seasonings because they will irritate my gut, unfortunately.
yeah, same.
And then
Um,
the last one is, what are you currently watching or reading?
What did I just watch? Okay, so this is kind of a nerdy thing, but I really like ancient history and stuff like that. And actually like just a personal thing. My book series that I've written, I originally got inspired to write it by this author, Graham Hancock, who writes about alternative history. And he just came out with a series on Netflix called, oh God, I don't even know what it was called. I put it on so fast that I didn't even
Like
really
the
look at the title.
like ancient apocalypse? Yeah,
Yeah, yes,
I was
that.
thinking about watching that after this. Do I need to?
It's really good. It's kind of like dry. Like it's a lot like he writes like 600-page books about alternative history. It's a lot like his books. So it's like some people I think might find it boring, but I was so interested in the whole thing. I watched the whole like every episode in like one night. So I just watched that. I'm reading like a bunch of stuff right now though. Like I start reading a book and then like I start reading another one. So that's what I just watched.
Okay.
awesome.
I'm gonna have to put it on. So you have a book series. Tell people what it's called, where they can find that, and then where they can find you on social media.
So my book series is called the Lucy Divine series. There's only one book out right now. It's called Finding a Nevra, and it's essentially like a sci-fi young adult novel. I always describe it as Stranger Things meets a Cinderella story. So people can find that on Amazon if they do want to check it out. Otherwise, you can find my content about being an ex-vegan and about carnivore on my Instagram, which is called the Ex Plant Eater, and my YouTube channel, which I don't update as much as Instagram, but I'm trying. And that is also called the Ex Plant Eater.
Awesome. Quick question though. Do you ever see yourself offering any coaching services to help people like transition from being an ex-vegan?
Ah, no, I feel like I would need to go and get like some kind of certificate if I was to do that. And I'm so like I don't like telling people what to do. So that's why I like making content because I can talk about my own anecdotal experience with that potentially in the future, but I don't know. Like I don't know if my personality is suited for that.
Yeah, I hear ya. Well, you're making some awesome content, and if I ever get like vegan questions, I'm like, go ask Josie. This is not my wheelhouse. So it seems like you're reaching out and, speaking to a lot of people and changing their lives. So that's awesome.
Thank you. And thank you guys so much for having me on. This was fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. And thank you guys for listening. Bye.